Hello, I'm AbyaX and welcome back to episode 414 of the Minecraft Xbox Updated Adventures Let's Play. This is the Let's Play where I give you a weekly update as to what's going on in my survival world, as well as of course life, the universe, and everything in between. And in today's episode, I'm going to be working on something which is fairly pointless. I'm going to do something pointless, I'm going to tell you pointless stories why I do it, or at least it's going to seem like I'm doing something pointless, because here's the deal, right? I have a giant cobblestone block. You might know the thing, it's one of the earliest builds I did because I was just collecting so much cobblestone while I was mining, and then later on I got the Netherrack block because again I had enough Netherrack, I thought I could do it. I eventually turned the Netherrack block into a gold zombie pigman farm, which doesn't really work in Bedrock, but I'm turning the cobblestone thing into something else very slowly too. And I figure, you know what, if I've got a cobblestone block and a Netherrack block, people always ask why not make a giant end block and put it over there, and the answer is because I don't have enough endstone, and mining endstone isn't really a fun thing, except wait a minute, haven't I already done that? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. The answer is yes, we have, in fact, been mining a lot of endstone somewhat recently, maybe like 6 months to a year ago, and I just have them stored up in chests that are kind of getting on my nerves anyway. So why don't I take my somewhat pointless tunnel that was also dug for very strange reasons, all the way to my end, where I have a huge amount of endstone from my somewhat pointless project, and put it all together and make a thing. So yeah, the theme of today's video, you might have worked out from the fact that I've said it about 10 times by now, is seemingly pointless, but maybe not on the surface, and that's also maybe what I want to talk about at least a little bit, because yeah, the Let's Play, as you all know, it's not just an opportunity to see what's going on in the Minecraft world. Although I definitely do love seeing the slow progression that kind of comes over time with the world and seeing it slowly shape through the course of these episodes, and maybe some of you do too. But it's also the opportunity to explain what's been going on. And honestly, a lot of the past week has been spent at some big events that I guess I'll talk about once they've, kind of processed next weekend. Honestly, once this video has been recorded, I'll be going to those events. I've got a wedding. I've got such a crazy story about a friend. Again, it's just a marriage, but like I'm 24, so a friend being married is actually quite significant, especially the way in which it happened. But I'll explain that after we get to the end, and also after I oh. Man, that T return bug is still there. 1.12.1 came out this week, by the way, and despite being basically a bug fix update that took over a month to work on, it hasn't fixed the most notable 1.12 bug, at least to me, of that open T return thing every time you enter a new dimension. I guess most people don't transfer dimensions all the time, but I do, damn it. Also, I really need to fix this end. It's it's a mess right now. I appreciate that. Oh, one hit kill. Nice. But yeah, the end is a bit of a mess right now. That's a thing that I've totally got to think about and deal with. But separately, I'm going to make myself some chests because I have a lot of endstone. I need to transfer it. But how am I going to transfer it? Except, wait a minute, we know what the solution is, right? We got shulker boxes. We make a bunch of these. We load them up with the endstone from the chests, and then we can carry it around all with us at once. So yeah, all of this endstone can be loaded in just 4 shulker boxes or so. I'll make 5 just because I brought enough shulker shells to do that anyway, because in my head I anticipated 5 or 6, but 4 or 5 is just as good, so we'll take 5. We'll put a spare one just over here, because you never know when you're going to want a shulker box. Why not have one in the end? And then, yeah, we can just kind of load up all of the endstone, block by block, using our inventory spaces, into the shulker boxes. It's a little bit of a strange process. You could say, if you wanted to, it's a bit of a pointless process, but, isn't everything pointless when you describe it that way? And yes, actually, yes it is. That's one of the things I'm going to dive into in today's video, because, yeah, one of the things that's kind of been happening in the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen it. Everyone's like, oh, it's something going insane, so you can't, people being concerned, but it's actually been some really good, like, I guess, mental forward progress. And I want to talk about one of the big things that happened, I guess, mildly unrelated. So if you live in the United Kingdom, which I'll admit only, like 12% if you do, but for those of you who live in the UK, you might know that we had some really big train issues. I think it was like strikes, but also there was like basically the whole of the network was having some issues, maybe related to heat, maybe related to strikes, maybe some weird like combination of the three, but there were issues on the train network. It was a whole problem by itself, right? And this actually affected me. So my train home, I was just getting home from something which wasn't even that big of a thing, but getting home, which was meant to take me like half an hour or something, was crazy delayed. It was going to be, instead of 30 minutes, it was going to be delayed an hour, and like, okay, an hour extra's kind of rough, but then it kept on being delayed and delayed. It sucks, right? Like, no one ever wants to have their life delayed. No one ever wants something to be slower than they expect it to be, which, is why these videos are so great when they're super long, when you expect a 5-minute explanation as to pointless things, right? But no, yeah, you get the point. Like, people don't like delays. No one is ever like, yeah, delay, heck yeah. Actually, wait, no, I changed my mind. I love how sometimes I'll contradict myself mid-sentence, but I just realized, okay, pro tip for anyone out there right now, if you're flying to or from the EU, you really, really want to have a delay, because you get, if it's a short-haul flight, 250 euros for 3 hours. If it's a long-haul flight, I think it's 4 hours, but then you get like 600 euros. You can make a profit on your flight if it's delayed. It's a cool thing when your flight gets more than 4 hours delayed, or more than 3 hours if it's short-haul. So yeah, you actually do want to delay in that one circumstance. I have made a profit from a couple of flights before. It's a fun thing, in my opinion. But what isn't a fun thing is when you need to be somewhere and you can't get there. And I think this is an issue people have with all forms of public transport. I think especially because a lot of my audience is US-based, you're going to be like, wow, yeah, that's why I love my trusty old car, right? Because it's always going to take me where I want it to go. Except it's not, right? You're still relying on the car. You're still relying on external factors. Sure, not necessarily external humans, but there is always a human somewhere in the process, right? Like, even if you're like, oh yeah, but my car never breaks down. Well, you still need fuel, which requires you know, like a person to be at the pump, right? I don't know how fuel pumping works, but I'm pretty certain you need a person to be there to pay. The person can be like, nah, actually, you don't get gas because I don't like you today. You know, my wires are broken because I'm a train or something. This analogy works, trust me. Actually, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure that it does. So what we'll do is we'll get a start on the kind of shape of the project. As a pro tip, like as far as like what you need to focus on in Minecraft, because you know, in these videos you can tell the moments where I'm focused on the game versus when we're talking about the kind of things that we do while we play the game. So obviously, when you're like placing the very first blocks, you always want to have attention paid very carefully, very delicate early, which is why the first block we place is going to be roughly somewhere over here. But to know exactly where to place it, we need to look at, oh, is that actually right? This looks like it's a block further forward. Oh no, it's right. But to work out exactly where this goes, we don't just eyeball it. Eyeballing it is a fun way to do things. But if it's a big project that might take you hours, and I'm starting to worry now this might take me hours, but if it's a big project like this, always make sure you check like, 1, the measurements, and 2, the distances perfectly. So this right here has 20 blocks between this and between that. So they're 21 blocks apart, I think that'd make them. But you just have to measure 20 blocks of space in between this and the start of the corner. Because it's a perfect cube, it's easy to do otherwise, but making sure you get this right is gonna save me a lot of hassle later down the line. For any pointless project, for any pointful project, for anything that you care about and want to see later, you need to make sure you get this right. So I've just counted that as being the 20th block. This should be good, but you know, I'm gonna double check. It was actually 21 blocks, by the way, and also it just started raining because I hate my life. But yeah, you get the point that, yeah, a small check like that can save you so much pain later. So I'm even going to triple check right now. Just one more check. Is this 20 blocks now? Definitely. 1, 2. Okay, it's definitely 20 blocks, and now it should be easy enough to follow. We just follow the wall over there, all the way to that end, and then we've got one of the sides done. And then once we get one of the other sides done, it's a cube. So you just need 2 sides to work out all the sides, and then you're good. It's really, really cool like that. Oh, also, while we're here anyway, and while it's raining, because my plan is to sleep in one of those villager beds when it turns night, which it won't because I just slept. But while I'm here anyway, I can actually achieve something kind of cool, kind of related, right? Because I have these 2 swamp villagers that I took over here to a jungle. I've made myself technically a village, you might call it. And yeah, these guys take forever to breed and rebreed. So eventually they should decide to breed if I spend enough time here. Also, this villager should grow up into an adult. So spending time here is not only useful because I'm making a thing which is maybe valuable to someone somewhere, but also, oh, literally they start breeding right now. Well, there goes my theory about needing a lot of time. But yeah, no, you get the point that, like, there's lots of things in Minecraft that only work when you're near them, at least in Bedrock, that's how things work. I know it is on Java for servers too, but there's lots of things that only work when you're near them, so sometimes making sure you do stuff like that is important. But should I get back to my story? That was another rhetorical question, by the way. But I think it's funny if I say, no, actually, let me talk about the weather today. What a great topic we want to talk about. It is actually very hot in the UK. I thought, like, I got back in September and like, okay, the few months where it gets mildly hot, they're over. It's done. But you know what? There's, the UK temperature will always surprise you, I guess, is the lesson I learned. You know, I always assume these cubes were 50 by 50. They're actually 51 by 51, which is actually a good thing. You might say, like, oh, that's such an unround number. But you want to have an odd number so you can actually have a perfect, like, spacing in the middle. I think that's a good thing overall. Yeah, that's my new official position on this one. Also, I should move those end banners to be on the end block when I do it. So, you know, we're learning things all over the place. But, yeah, I think you know, this is my video, so I'll answer my rhetorical questions incorrectly, and instead, we'll talk about the endstone block. Because here is an entirely pointless fact that you don't need to know about the endstone block. It's actually the exact same texture as cobblestone. If you look at it, it's just inverted, like literally the same texture, same, you know, things in the same places, but inverted. Or it was. Actually, no, has the new one removed that little quirk? I think it actually might have. But you know, the old endstone was the same as the old cobblestone texture, just inverted. You know, my one fun fact has been removed by Minecraft updates. Is this what it's like to grow old? Speaking of what it's like to be old, by the way, you know, so I was waiting for my train. It was really, really delayed, and I needed to wait for it because they kept delaying it in increments. They didn't do the kind thing where they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be an hour, so go do a nice thing. They're like, no, it's going to be another 5 minutes, 20 times over or whatever. So, you know, I was just like, okay, I'm going to wait for this train. I'm going to sit nearby it. And yeah, I was sat on the kind of ground, I guess, because a lot of people have like a big aversion to sitting on the ground, but not me. I feel like, you know what, if you need a seat, the ground's always there for you. So I sat on the ground like up in the corner in a nice little kind of private place, and then eventually an old man comes and you know, sits by me. I would say old, not really old man, like if I had to guess before knowing him, I'd be like, you're not semi-old. He's not all the way old where he's like, man, you are basically not alive anymore. But also, you know, like, okay, you could tell there's been some aging going on there, right? And yeah, the interesting thing is, like, I usually don't talk to strangers, but I decided to make an exception for this guy. As like, you know, how's it going? Like, he asked something, like, I don't know, like, he actually wanted to talk, and I was like, you know, I'll give this my best shot. Like, train delays, this is the one time British people can come together, in my head at least. It's a common enemy we all have, so let's try and talk. And so we go through the basics, but then very quickly he's just like, so, do you have a lady friend? And I was actually quite shocked, because I assumed that this was a word, this is actually a word I used to describe, like, you know, girls who are friends, but also you know, like, it just as a general term, because girlfriend has such a, kind of like a baggage behind it. It's both really vague, but also really specific at the same time. You're giving out a lot of details while also giving out nothing, and I never liked the term girlfriend personally. But what you know, like, so, you know, like, I was like, wow, you know, he uses the right word, and what do you know, it just so turns out something breakup I mentioned in a previous video. But yeah, it was like kind of like weird to explain. But honestly, I figured, you know, actually, I think explaining to a stranger is the best way to get something like that off your chest. Like, you might think like, oh, you gotta have a really good friend to tell them about your worst times. But no, you know, strangers are the best because, one, they're going to be entirely honest with you because they have no reason not to be. They have no vested interest in you continuing to do X or Y. Oh, by the way, here's a fun touch. Fire aspect doesn't work when it's raining because obviously it doesn't. Everything just gets unlit up, which is sad. Anyway, let's finally get some sleep in. Oh, look, they've got 2 baby villagers now. Oh, they've got 3. They've been breeding a lot while I've been gone, which I guess is good for them. But yeah, sometimes I don't mind sharing with strangers if they really want to know anyway. It's like, you know, if you want some interesting details and, you know, you don't really care who they're about, then boy, have I got, oh god, oh, no. What are you, okay, we're fine apparently. Apparently that is not good enough for a zombie to kill a baby villager. It probably should be, but you know, that's not a battle I'm going to be fighting anytime soon. But yeah, so, hey, we got 2 of them in the boat now. Look at this, we got like a little villager cartel going on here. We're basically kidnapping villagers, which is concerning by itself. Not the problem today, though. The problem today is working on this endstone cube. And explaining that, like, after I shared, you know, like, I don't know how it came up, but the guy's, like, talking about his life. You know, he's doing the thing where he's, like, you know, talking about all these sorts of details, whatever. You know, you find them interesting. I'll reference the things that I find interesting, and I'll basically tell you the other ones aren't. Like, I would like to believe I'm somewhat honest in that I won't, I don't pretend that a conversation's interesting if it doesn't, which is arguably rude, arguably polite. You tell me which one you think it is. But, yeah, it's one of those things that I just kind of don't really do. And so he says that, yeah, he's been married for 46 years. And I'm like, man, that is literally twice my lifetime. Because, oh, actually, no, the reason that came up is because he was talking about how his daughter was just getting married. And he's like, oh, 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce. And I was like, yep, for young people are disposable. And, you know, that probably includes your wife, but hopefully not, or something like that. But yeah, he explains how, like, oh yeah, he's been married for 46 years. And honestly, like, when I hear 46 years, I don't know, like, I can't even picture that amount of time, let alone picture that amount of time in a relationship with the same singular person, you know, obviously, you know, like, something young person, am I right? But, yeah, it's one of those things that, like, it kind of stuck with me as like, wow, yeah, this is an interesting thing. And unlike all the other times, because one of the one of the things you always hear, it's like really stereotypical advice. I don't think it's good advice, but it's like, oh yeah, old people have so much to say. I mean, do they really have so much to say? Is it good things that they have to say? But I think there is a lot of like knowledge that you can only get through experience and etc. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this as my one opportunity. Like, hey, I've been honest with you, you've been honest with me. Be honest with me with this one question. When you're in a relationship for 46 years, do the downs get longer? Because one of the things I've noticed across like any single time I've been dating anyone or in a relationship with anyone, it's just the whole concept of like, oh yeah, there are ups and there are down periods, right? Like you have breakup times, you have makeup time. There's a reason that both breakup and makeup sex are a thing, right? Like there's a whole thing of like you have times where you get together closer and times where you push apart further. That's the natural inclination of all humans, right? We're always working towards people or away from people, in the grand scheme at least, not on a day-to-day or moment-to-moment basis. But yeah, it's a thing that happens. So I was wondering, like, so in a 46-year relationship, was there like 7 years where you just weren't good? Like, how does that even work? Like, I can't even process that. And yeah, his response, again, I love the honesty, but also it kind of like threw me off, was that like, yeah, the ups are really good, like he loves the loving thing, but he also said there was like 5 years where he made a financial decision his wife didn't support, and like she was really bitter to him the whole time. And he said something that stuck with me. He said if some loving lady had just whisked him off his feet, he would have like broken up with his wife in an instant to go with any young lady, any lady showing him compassion. And I was like, man, that is brutally honest. Like his wife was like maybe like 4 or 5 meters away, like not within hearing distance because she was in a big crowd, but like I was like, man, that is I admire the honesty, but also that's kind of nuts, right? Like to just like to go through so many years and basically admit that like, yeah, totally would have just broken up in an instant. I just didn't have the opportunity. Because it kind of goes, it kind of matches exactly what I said about the marriage thing, right? That people are just people are more available and therefore less exclusive. More available and therefore more disposable. And that is just a truth of the modern world that I guess you have to fix in your own way. You have to decide how you make people not disposable. Because, yeah, a lot of people... otherwise, the default position is there's just so many ways to find people, meet people, etc. That if you're in the same situation where you have 7 years of bad down, that you might do something bad. And is that even a bad thing? I think it is, like, because for so long humans have existed the idea of like, oh yeah, there is one person out there. It's a romantic idea that I think is implanted by most of us. Maybe I used to think it was implanted by society, but I think it is like biological on some level, at least to me. I can only speak for myself. But yeah, I don't know what the moral of this story is, besides human beings are messed up, and being sad in a relationship was probably easier back when there were when there were fewer solutions. Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I think it's wacky, it's counterintuitive. But maybe being unhappy in a relationship for so long, like, honestly, like, imagine after 7 years of just non-stop, like, being ragged on, like, the worst parts of relationships. Because to overshare a little bit more, with you, the internet, because you're all strangers to me. I don't care about you. You're not going to see me or meet me. So, to overshare with you, I've only had, like, 2 extra long relationships. Most times I have been on dates, there's been, like, a disastrous date where I had to, like, be like, whoa, that's an explosion, and I can feel the heat from here, and my bad, your bad, this is a double bad, I guess. We're gonna walk away from this. Again, I've got some stories of some of the worst ones that one day will make great YouTube videos, but yeah, the interesting thing is that, like, the only real long relationships both got bitter like a year in, maybe not even a year in, like maybe like 9 months in. There's like there's a honeymoon phase in German. It's called Flitterwochenphase, which I think is just cute and adorable. But there's a phase in every relationship, maybe even friendships too, where just things are better, and then maybe your expectations adjust. I've never really known, but I think it's interesting that, like, this old man had he's had more years of one down than any of actually, I guess statistically something like 90% of you watching have had a single relationship, and I can't even imagine it. That's one of the reasons I think, like, old people have stories. I don't think their stories are great when they tell you about their accomplishments, like, oh yeah, I did this and that. Like, there's a reason people call it boomery when people talk about their successes. But hearing from failures from old people, it's something so valuable because you can learn from it, or just feel sad about life and the world and stuff. You can really pick which way you want to take it. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a fun thing. Kind of like, I think, building this little end stone wall right here. It's only one of the 5 walls that you require to make a cube, but it's really satisfying to make a cube in Minecraft sometimes. Maybe it's like just because I have so much of a resource, it's nice to put it to some use. Maybe it's because it's easy and it allows you to put your brain to work in wherever it needs to go or whatever. But I definitely like the ridiculous just it's a cube as a method of doing something, especially as a contrast to everything else, right? Like if everything's cubes in your world, I mean, I would just describe Minecraft, right? But if everything's cubes in your world, then nothing is cubes. But also, if you have like a lot of interesting different things, then you have that as a thing. Anyway, to talk about an entirely different thing that's happened recently, I said I was watching a lot of TV. I think maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but going through, I don't know, like watching TV is something that I do more when I have more downtime and more sad time, which is basically the same thing, right? Like, you're usually not very effective when you're not in your best moods. And so before I was on, again, I would say I'm mostly better for the most part now, but before I went on my long trip across the narrow sea, actually the very wide sea, the Atlantic is actually probably one of the widest seas, like right up there with the Pacific Ocean, like second widest maybe. So went right after I crossed the wide sea to North America, right before, I should say, I watched a bunch of TV shows, and one that I got back into, like I decided to rewatch, was Community. People sometimes ask, like, TV show recommendations. Community is always like, yeah, this is a do it, you know, like, don't even question it, just start watching Community, because, like, the reason I was less enthusiastic about recommending it before is because I remember it ended it like, oh yeah, it's like, it's, you know, it's good, it's not the best thing, but it's good, really recommend it. But the first few seasons of Community are so good. They're like, you know, they're really well put together. There's a good idea, it's well executed, there's good acting, you know, there's good all the things. Who doesn't love a TV show where everything is good? And so yeah, it's really good. Obviously there's some form of flaws, but it's good for a sitcom or whatever you would call that style of TV show. And so yeah, but I finished Community. I watched all the way from season 1 to season 6 within the span of about 2, maybe 3 weeks. Like I guess pretty fast, not as fast as I had to binge watch Game of Thrones the first time round, but one, you know, like I sped through the series to some extent, something like 60-70 episodes, and yeah, when I got to the end of it, I would say I got emotional to some extent. I would say there is like a emotional feeling when you finish a TV show, especially one you really like, especially one that connects with you or resonates with you on some level, right? Again, maybe you disagree, but if you disagree, then I'm gonna go ahead and say that you're incorrect, because, you know, that's how disagreeing works on the internet. There are the right people and there are the wrong people. Am I right? There we go. I'm doing political discourse, I hope. Correctly, I hope. Good progress so far, by the way. We're getting there a lot faster than I feel like we did in the previous cubes. Admittedly, building techniques are slightly easier now. I think pick blockers, honestly, changed the life of doing like a build with a lot of repetition, which just so happens to describe most of my building. So, also, yeah, we're breeding jungle villagers. It's a whole fun thing. We're going to use it for a different project. I'm thinking of making a village in the end. In fact, that's probably what I'm going to do after this is finished. Like, who knows for sure. But, yeah, so, like, it just sounds like a cool project, right? Like, you know, I have a Nether overworld. Why not have an End overworld and have a villager farm that maybe has trades and stuff? Because if I'm going to have an XP farm, it makes sense to link it to a village farm. See, you're seeing the ideas linked together, it makes sense. But maybe what also you think makes sense is like, yeah, if you watch a TV show and you connect with it the whole time, when it's over, of course, you're gonna be, you know, at least some amount of emotional, right? Like, whether it's a good emotion, bad emotion, probably depends on the ending, you'd say. But, yeah, one of the things that really put me off rewatching Community were the bad seasons. If you don't know, there's a season of Community that's just referred to as the Gas Leak season, even in the show itself. It's like, the guy lost control, the crazy guy, Dan Harmon. He wasn't in control. He's the Rick and Morty guy, by the way, if you like Rick and Morty. But, he lost control of the show, and then also some other people changed hands. And because of that, like, the show just kind of lost its entire point. It wasn't a good season, is my point. But I think, actually, a bad season can make a TV show better. I think that having a downtime for a show might actually help certain TV shows. And that sounds crazy. I think, in general, the advice for making something good is, 1, don't make it bad, and 2, don't make it bad, right? Like, yeah, generally speaking, the way to make good TV is not to make bad TV. I think the last season of Game of Thrones being bad did ruin Game of Thrones. I'm definitely gonna double down on that opinion, if I have not already. But at the same time, you've got to admit that you form a relationship with a show when you watch a show, you're forming a form of a relationship, not the same type as that, old man with his 46-year marriage, not the same type as me when I slowly get bitter at people, or people get bitter at me over the course of 8 months. It's always the other way around. Maybe I'm just missing some big social cues thing. But, like, it's never, it's never the same exact relationship, but it is a form of relationship, right? It does have a lot of parallels to those things. And like most relationships, there is a stability in there, which is the defining characteristic of it. I think one of the things that isn't really taught as a key thing in relationships, because, obviously relationships, the big thing that movies say is like, hey, relationships are about love and lust and the first moments and the magic butterfly feelings in your stomach when you're around someone new for the first time. But the actual function of a relationship, assuming you're going for a long-term one, if you just want butterflies, then you keep finding new girlfriends every, that'd be like a month or something, as long as the butterflies last. But the thing that a relationship actually has for it by definition is the stability that it brings. This is someone that you're with for extended amounts of time, right? And that's kind of what TV shows are too. And maybe you could say YouTube, but I'm not qualified to talk about that one. I'm just a YouTuber, right? But I think you kind of form a relationship with a TV show. It becomes a fixed part of your life. It becomes a regular part of your life that has, if you watch it on TV, it has a regular time. If you watch it, on like a Netflix binge, then once a year there's a big time where you spend time with the show, right? Or maybe you still watch it once weekly, because some shows on Netflix only come out every week. It's a whole problem that I kind of hate. I feel like if it's on Netflix, you should just wait and then binge it. But I can never do that to myself. I don't know if I can binge all of BoJack Horseman when that comes out, but you better believe I'm gonna try to, and then fail if it comes out weekly. But anyway, to to stay on topic here, which is something we never do anyway. So if you expect that from me, then you expect too much, my good friends. But to stay at least a little bit on topic, I think when a TV show ends, it hurts because you're losing a relationship. That weekly interaction, that stability, that thing that's always there for you. Because, a show like Community especially, it has regular reoccurring episodes. There's bottle episodes where they all learn secrets about each other and they kind of escalate each time there's one. There's there's the paintball jokes and this and that. There's lots of different episodes that have trope formats where oh, it's one of these again. It's something, it's not only that the show is the same thing with the same actors, the same, characters that you like to watch. It's kind of the same people being there, but it's also the same formats in a way. And it makes me realize that of course you're sad when something like that ends. A part of your life now has to change, and change is scary, not necessarily bad, but I think it's better sometimes to be that way, right? I think, to use a far overused phrase in the world, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, right? But it totally is true for TV shows, right? You don't want to be like, oh yeah, every TV show is going to end, so I'm not going to watch TV. That'd be an entirely ridiculous opinion. And that is maybe how it works with every other type of relationship. Maybe that's how it works with friends or with this or that. Even though things can go a little bad here and there, maybe you should just accept that. Maybe you should keep it in mind as well, if I like this TV show and it went bad, why can't I like my friend when they're a little bad? Why can't I help them improve? Why can't I do this and do that? And to expand the TV show analogy a little bit, bad episodes don't make a bad show. Trying and being interesting can be better than making good episodes. That's why so many TV shows try to make a weird, quirky, artsy, strange episode, because that is the gimmick they're going for. I'm going to try and place this on the side here. I'm going to regret doing this later, but let's just grab some endstone. And, oh, by the way, I should answer this because otherwise someone's going to. How do you get endstone into your inventory without, opening your inventory? It's the pick block key. You can do it in survival, both on Bedrock and on Java. It's been a while since it's added. You have to bind the key yourself, but still, it's very useful. It makes life easier. By the way, is that a nitwit villager? It is. Oh, I guess there's no skilling tables around here. There's no professions for them to pick up. So I guess he just became a nitwit. Oh, sorry, it's not called a nitwit anymore. It's called unemployed. Jeez, guys, so politically correct. They actually are just called unemployed. But people do get really annoyed when I call them nitwits, and it's like, does it make a huge difference in the world? And I guess maybe to you it does. Maybe that's a part of our relationship you'd like to improve. And if so, then maybe you've learned a thing from that. But yeah, no, I think it's something, I think TV shows kind of are a lot like Friends. And it sounds like such a stupid thing to say. Maybe even a slightly frivolous thing to say. But I'll say it. This is my YouTube channel. I think that not only are TV shows like Friends, and not like Friends the TV show, but like Friends the concept in the real world, but that is the primary function of them as well. I think that is why, bad TV, in air quotes, does better than good TV, in also air quotes. Because you want to have some fun. Like, having a human connection is always important in some levels. I think some people horribly mismanage that human connection, and that's why you'll never... That's why it's hard to trust some people, and that's why it's hard to make friends, because you don't know how people are going to abuse your particular human connection. But I think it is cool that they can perform that role. And I think, actually, that might be, to some extent, the role YouTubers perform. One of the things that I always feel... I feel a bit of I don't know, I think schadenfreude is the word, right? But, I feel like this can't be real. I feel like it's not a correct thing, but I try to go along with it. Whenever someone says, like, oh yeah, this video helped me through that. Like, a lot of people in response to the last video are like, hey, you mentioned that a few years ago you had a borderline abusive relationship or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, same here, and I finally got out of it, blah, blah, blah. Like, the fact that those are genuine things people said, a part of me is like, oh, people are just saying that because that's what people say. But are they just saying that because that's what people say? Or is that what my brain's going through? It seems as though there are genuine things you can learn. Because the best way that people learn is people, right? One of the things you might wonder is, like, we automate so much in the world. We are going through one of the craziest phases of automation, but we can't automate teaching, for example. We can't automate learning or love or all these things that there are huge corporate interests in doing. If we could remove love as a thing, then the world would be much, richer and stuff. But we won't, because that's a thing you need other people for in that way. And yeah, I don't like people, but also I like people occasionally, and that's my big learning point I got from all of this. That it all kind of ties together in the same way that your friends only matter because you've known them for so long, and I guess the same with relationships. That sometimes it's worth staying in a relationship, even through 7 years of bad, 7 seasons of the worst stuff ever. Because you never know what's going to emerge on the other side. And it's weird that this is the conclusion after breaking up. But it's something I do think about, if nothing else. Because you think, usually the conclusion, like, people go through a cycle, right? Of like, oh yeah, so go through long-term relationship fails, go through lots of very, very, very short-term relationships, and then, eventually, by accident, find one that lasts for a long time, right? That's my understanding of the relationship cycle that, like, 99% of you are going to go through. So sorry to call you out like that, but it's true. The better the sooner you learn to deal with it, the better it'll be. I don't know how zombies can't get the villagers and boats, but I'm really glad that's a feature. For whatever reason they decided to put that in, it's one I'm definitely glad about. They're even managing to get experience while being attacked by the zombies, it seems. Huh, or not experience, but the green particles, the magic, like, something's happening. That's happening, which is interesting. Well, so I think that villager literally walked over my face. Wasn't very considerate of him. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, let's get back up. Let's do this. You can see it's getting there. We're coming together. Things are happening in ways. Is there a cat trapped under the ice, by the way? Oh, because this is technically a village. Now cats start spawning. And one of them has spawned inside a block of ice. How does this even happen? Like, how do I explain this to anyone? Is the cat going to choke? It's a transparent block, so it shouldn't, right? I just have some cats trapped under ice. Huh, I guess I've learned a useful little trick. If you surround your village with ice, there's a chance the cats will try and spawn on the blocks under the ice, and then you have an ice filled with a cat. We'll see if the cat suffocates in a bit, but I don't think it will. So that's good news. The cat's not happy to be in there, though. That definitely has to be said. But yeah, it's funny to me because the overriding message that you can take from, like, okay, so take those two stories that have, like, some link together, right? I finished Community, and it had a bad season. It had a lot of bad episodes, if I'm being honest. So there was a lot of bad in that show that was maybe outweighed by the good. I mean, I'd still recommend it. I still heartily did recommend it to you and just say, like, if you like it, you'll like the first 3 seasons, and then you can choose whether you want to watch the rest, kind of. Like, you can choose whether you want to commit to the show or to dump it and, pump in another show instead. Like, that's your entire prerogative, your choice entirely. But I think the thing you can learn from the link between those stories, if there even is one, is that there are patterns in life. Humans are just pattern recognition devices. Both those stories were entirely pointless, but yet there was a point to them, right? They did have a link, this whole cube is entirely pointless, but it kind of is a point to it. It is kind of... The reason this has a point is because it's been done twice before. Is that a good enough reason to do it again? And a lot of people instinctively, you know, they wouldn't think yes, but you would say yes, right? You know, without thinking, you'd be like, oh yeah, you've done that twice before. Of course you're going to do it again. But is that a good reason to to entirely do something again? Because to me, at least, when I start to think about it, it's like, no, actually, why? Just because something's been done before, it means it's going to be done again. But yeah, that's entirely what humans are. We are pattern recognition and pattern fulfilling devices. The thing that makes humans special, besides the fact that we develop tools, which is why we can kick a dolphin's ass, even though dolphins have supposedly higher IQs than us. I don't believe the people who study that. But, you know, pigs and dolphins have higher IQs than us. But do you know why we eat pigs and even sometimes why we eat dolphins? You shouldn't eat dolphin, by the way. But, you know, do you know why we can eat both those animals and why those animals... it's never like, oh no, Mr. President, there's been a threat. You know, there's a rogue nation in this part of the world. And he's like, oh, is it Syria again or what is it? And it's like, no, it's the dolphins. They've banded together. You know the reason that's not a thing? It's not only because they can't use tools, but it's also because pattern recognition is a thing that allows us to create what are effectively giant patterns. That's what civilization is. It's using the same working formula again and 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 again to make life as we know it possible. The first person who came up with a successful idea, we took the pattern and we repeated it. We take successful ideas, we take meaning from the noise and the randomness, because, you know, the entire concept of a coincidence is just like, oh yeah, the pattern recognition thing in your brain went off and that's a thing. Like, what if there was a YouTuber from Hong Kong who was called MyBX Moi Fat, or something, you know, it's really stupid. It's gotta be a stupid coincidence here, okay? If there was a YouTuber that happened to be exactly like me, he made the exact same video. Actually, I'd assume he was a copy of me. But if, you know, you'd be like, wow, that's crazy. They've got he's got the same name as you, and he makes the same content, and he's even got the same catchphrase of like, you know, my VX Moi Cat is mess or whatever. I don't know why I'm just adding M's to things these days. But you know, you would think that as a coincidence, and like, wow, that's so crazy. It's not so crazy. Like, there's a lot of people on Earth. A lot of things are going to happen. There is someone who is exactly like me out there, right? It's a thing. And this is one of the worst things, because I think when your pattern recognition goes off, you can make a lot of bad decisions from it. One of the things that I still have trouble dealing with to this day is when I find someone that's played the same obscure games from their childhood, right? My brain is just like, yeah, like the highest level of hype you can imagine. One of the things someone asked me recently, actually, like, so like, you know, why is you know, like having someone who plays games like important for you? And I don't actually know why, like, but for some reason, maybe it's just because games have been such an important thing throughout my life. Whenever I find that someone's like, oh yeah, I played these two, I did that, or like they appreciate my Guitar Hero skill or whatever. You know, exact like small weird niche thing it is. I'm like, there's a thing we have in common. The whole thing about finding someone in common with someone is just like, oh, coincidence. Because obviously sometimes it's great just to talk about something, but if you don't care actually enough to talk about it, you're just like, wow, we have the same thing. You can use that coincidence to make a significance that isn't really there. And I think it's actually, you know, again, like instinctively my brain's like, that's so stupid. So we all just find coincidences all day that don't exist and then pat ourselves on the back for these things that aren't even really real. You know, that's like my instinctive reply. But then I think maybe that's actually all that matters. Maybe, you know, like whether you find meaning or not in this video and in this series, this channel, whether you find meaning or not in the story I told just now. I'd love to just reveal, like, it was fake. You thought it was cool that this man loved his wife that long, or that he didn't love his wife that long, but really I just made the old man up. I don't talk to strangers. I did. I would like to say I've been behaving out of character recently, but in like a good way. I said last week, but when things go downhill, it gives you an opportunity to restructure your life, to reevaluate and assess what is valuable to you as a person, what is important to you as an individual. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's a cool little thing. And you know, I've been speaking to strangers occasionally. It's been actually a really helpful experience. That sounds stupid. That sounds like means nothing. And you can totally just be like, yep, Toy Cat has gone insane. We're gonna call the insanity police, which is totally a thing on him. But I think at the same time, But I do think that at the same time, it is really... But I do think that, out of the craziness comes the things that can guide you and be your guiding principles, your guiding whatever else throughout your life. And one of the ones that I would say is like important lesson from all of that, in all of the stuff I've spouted today, is that like everything's a coincidence. But you can, all that matters is using your coincidence engine, using your nonsense to, because you can say that so the idea of a coincidence just means that like, so there's no value in it inherently, it just makes sense because it hits your brain, and you can very easily go down a nihilistic path and say so nothing matters because it's all just coincidences. But I don't take that approach. I take the approach that like, okay, so either everything matters or nothing matters. And neither one of those really makes perfect sense. Like, not everything in the world matters. There are so many unimportant issues that you're tricked into caring about. I think the news is the worst of this, right? The news is literally an outlet, a thing that has the entire purpose of like, hey, we're going to make you think everything's important because the more news, quote unquote, you click, our revenue is based on how much of our news you read, which means we have an interest not in sharing good news, we have an interest in sharing things that you would be willing to believe on news, which is why the more opinionated and less factual news is often shared much more than the more factual and less opinionated news. But it's also, it goes to show that like, okay, so there's something that can mean things to people. And if you're trying to work out what means something and what doesn't mean something to, whatever, to people in general, to yourself, then maybe you just have to value like, okay, if it's either nothing or everything, then the easiest way to just take that is to say, okay, the only thing that matters is to focus on one important goal, to focus on one very important thing. I would say like you can take that two ways. Like you could make that like a project. Maybe a project is a YouTube channel. Maybe a project is, whatever it is. Or you can say you got to focus on the individuals. You can focus on the things being the important thing in your world, or you can focus on the individuals, or maybe you can focus on both. But the truth is, life is just all about those things. Like, once you go beyond, there's like two goals we have as humanity, right? There's survive and there's reproduce. And even reproduce is like kind of coded into us as just like find partner of long term. Because actually, side rant here, I'm doing it. We're taking a side rant. I thought I was going to wrap up the video because this has gone on way too long, but you better believe I thought wrong. A relationship, really, if you think about it, is just like two people slowly morphing together, all their characteristics kind of becoming similar, which, is kind of a good thing. Especially after 4 to 6 years, you're going to have so much in common with someone. I would, if you don't, then I would be shocked, right? It's kind of just like loving someone else is kind of an act of self-love in a way, because one of the things, I learned this because I had, I don't know if my then girlfriend was telling the truth, but I had a somewhat crazy girlfriend, and to put it politely, and one of the things like she'd always say is like, oh yeah, I can't do X because I don't feel like I'm someone worth loving, or something like that. Like, I can't do a thing for you because I'm so inherently unlovable that I can't trust you to love me. Like nonsense like that, right? But that is a thing you can get if you don't love yourself enough. If you don't love you, then you won't be able to trust someone else who loves you. And it sounds crazy, and again, in my opinion, it is to some extent crazy, but it seems to be the backed up opinion, if nothing else, right? That seems to be what people do. That seems to be the way we see these things. And yeah, so a relationship is just two people loving themselves enough to love each other until eventually they decide, what, I'd like to see half of me and hopefully less than half of that other person in the world. Or maybe you love the person so much, and, because you're actually, most people don't think of love so cynically, I hope. I really hope, actually. I think, I could have a whole existential crisis worrying if people do. But, I think most people actually don't see it that way. You just see it as like, oh yeah, this person's really swell. You get so many endorphins from hanging out with someone. I had like a somewhat successful moment in my life on that regard recently. And the endorphins it released were very, again, it's something unlike anything else. I would say even, to some extent, concerning. I was like, man, this sounds like what people describe when they describe mania to me. I literally couldn't walk. I was like, I have to run. It would have been harder for me to walk than it would have been to run. But the fact that your brain does that is a clear sign that it's one of the guiding things inside of you. And I think, honestly, the goal to have children is just hey, we're gonna morph together so much, because I like me and I like you And yeah, I want to finish by saying that, like, you've got to decide that either things or people are important, and they both kind of are important, but, you know, it's up to you which you prioritize in your coincidence matching machine and how you choose to make life important based on those things. But also, I'm just fascinated in the things and the processes of the entire that. I'm fascinated by the process of growth and of learning and of all the things that make people better. And that's why I'll never stop going on endless tangents about endless tangents. And I hope that's something you appreciate and is maybe a common theme. Because as I was talking about Community again, a show I liked, I finished it. It's kind of sad that it's over. As I was talking about it, I realized, like, man, actually, like, yeah, the consistent format episodes, every week I do a Let's Play. Usually there's Seed Sunday, right? It's a recurring formula. The live stream Thursdays, the sometimes Q&A, but not usually anymore, Q&A Saturdays. There's actually some parallels between YouTube and stuff like that. And I think, yeah, realizing that you choose what to make a part of your life and what isn't a part of your life will help you have more control and more power. Or maybe it will help you have the less. Maybe you realize that it's all pointless in the end and we're all going to eventually burn up into the sun. And if that's what you realize, then you know what? You're probably right anyway. So, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of the Minecraft Update Adventures Let's Play. We got, like, half done with this end cube, so I reckon we could finish it in another episode. It looks really cool as it is, though. Like, I kind of want to not. In between this episode and that, I'm going to start doing something with these villagers. And maybe something with this cat, too. Like, I feel like having a cat trapped under ice, in the ice. It's something I've got to take advantage of. I just don't know how. So that's a thing I'm going to work on. Don't worry. You're going to see some progress. It's probably going to be good for the cat. I can't make any promises right now, but, like, look at it. It's not safe to dig down, but let's do it anyway. Because... What the heck, man? How do you even? How do you even, cat? That's what I want to know. But yeah, thank you very much for watching this particular video, because I'm going to see you all in the next particular video. Or, you know, who knows? It's 2019 after all. Goodbye.